Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and we have a really fun video for Huohuo versus Silverwolf. It's fun because it's difficult, especially if you're a new player. Thinking about it, if you were to rewind back in 1.0 when I first started the game, giving me a choice between these two characters now is a really tough one to make, because one is a super good sustain character. If you do not have any sustain characters on your account, she's also hybrid offensive. She gives a lot of energy, attack, which is what a lot of people like for Tingyun's kit, is inbuilt in her in an AoE fashion. Silverwolf, on the other hand, gives you the damage that most new players desperately require, because you can defense break, you drop in weaknesses, helps make your account more efficient as well. So two very challenging characters to choose from if you are a new player. I'll also be talking about experienced player from more senior people who have joined the game since like 1.0 or slightly later on, maybe have more characters also. I think you'll find a lot of value as well. But anyways, you know we don't waste any time on this channel, so let's go ahead and jump right in with current value. We always like to start off with current value before talking about anything else, because we want to know exactly what they do for our account right now. No use buying them right now and then like 6 months later then they become relevant and increasing a lot of value on our account. In my opinion, for new players or players that do not have sustain, even experienced players that do not have sufficient sustain, and who are these kind of people? I would say is you only have maybe Natasha, you have Mark 7, you have Fire MC, and probably maybe only one like Bailu Japat. I think if you are in this group of people or you are very new, you don't even have too many sustain, Huohuo will be contributing a lot more to your account in terms of current value to your account. She will allow you access to deeper flaws in the Memory of Chaos, the Memory of Xianzhou and stuff like that, so you can at least get the free Stellar Jades. By doing the regular weeklies more often, you will be able to increase the amount of kind of like cashback if you talk about Stellar Jade returns if you are able to tackle harder content. There's no point having very well built DPSs if they can't survive, and sustain, very important in the early stages. In my personal opinion, I think that having that red screen of defeated is much worse than maybe losing 1 star because you don't have enough DPS. In that sense, for new players and players that don't have sustain, I would recommend Huohuo very significantly over the others. Of course, there is a catch. There are alternatives, but we'll talk about that in the next category. But let's first speak about Silverwolf. I think it's a very challenging comparison between these two, because it's really like both of them are really good for new players. And why Silverwolf is so good is she drops in a lot of defense breaking, a lot of debuffs on a single target, can be built as a sub DPS, so does scale into the later game too in terms of damage. She drops weaknesses, which makes it very nice if you are a new player or don't have too much resources or DPS characters. You can pick up like Zealer, you can play her in most teams. Mono Quantum team can settle everything. I think Silverwolf offers tons of value in that sense. So I guess if you have a lot of sustain, you would tend more towards Silverwolf. If you have a lot of DPSs, you probably would tend more towards Huohuo, because Silverwolf kind of scales inversely to the number of DPSs you have. If you have like every single element DPS already, you probably won't really need the defense breaking that she offers. You could make do with an alternative for her, which also drops defense break. But either way, don't get me wrong, both of these two are probably at the top of the tier list in echelons for being efficient for free-to-play players. Just tons of value. I'm just sad for a lot of us that are planning to choose between these two. It has to be done right now, especially if you're a newer player. Both very solid options. So that is for the current value. And I think at this point of time, a very important thing to talk about currently, of course, is alternatives. What do I mean by alternatives is, if you already have, for example, a Louis Vuitton bag or Chanel, and you're planning to get an Hermes bag, those are alternatives because they're all bags in a sense. But if it's a computer and you're getting a new handphone, that's kind of different. So that's what we aim to do. We want to know whether our purchase is pointless because we already have enough alternatives. Sorry for the long analogy, but anyways, Huohuo, in my opinion, I think very, very key alternatives to her will be the likes of Luota, the likes of Fuxuan, the likes of Japat, the likes of Bailu. Probably maybe Links to some extent, but I'll just leave these 5 stars in here since they are a bit more expensive and they are more comparable than a 4 star. So why do I say like these are alternatives? Generally speaking, all of them can solo sustain for the most part. And if you have a solo sustain, means you only need 2. So alternatives, if you have already 2 of them, you likely won't need a 3rd one. And that is the current situation a lot of us late game players are facing. If you already have like 2 of the meta sustained defensive units, Huohuo does feel a bit excessive, especially if you could just save it up for a future unit that's coming out that you really like, the design and stuff like that. Maybe a Harmony character, offensive character that's coming out in future. I think that's totally respectable, and I think it's a very solid and wise decision too. no need to feel FOMO to pick up every new character that's coming out. So that is for the alternatives part. And I put these 2 other characters here because they kinda are also able to be played. If you have like 2 of these, 1 standard, 1 limited, I would say it's also you have enough. Although you will talk about like inefficiency because they are not as meta as the other characters in the game, but in terms of sufficiency, just being enough, you already probably have a school bag already. You don't need a branded school bag, right? So I think for now, if you have any other characters that's coming out in the future, might be enough. You can wait on this character. Eventually, she will have a rerun too. As we can see, older characters do come back. The question is when, but anyway, they do come back. The alternatives here, of course, is Silver Wolf. And her real alternative, there is none for her emergency, like weakness break dropping, or rather the weakness break dropping only. There's no alternatives, but her defense breaking has tons of alternatives in Pella. I would say that I prefer Pella's defense breaking over Silver Wolf because it's an AoE fashion, and yeah, it's very, very solid in terms of AoE breaking rather than just focusing on single target, which makes her much more valuable in teams which revolve around like Ting Liu's team, AoE damage dealing, Imbibitor Lune, which is AoE damage, Blade, who are all very, very meta currently in game state. I think AoE defense breaking is a lot more versatile. Even the new characters like EODGamer characters coming up, she could also play into those teams. Where Silver Wolf outperforms is when there's a single target boss that you need to take down and you want to drop as much weaknesses into them, debuffs as you can. That's where she really outperforms Pella because her debuffing capabilities are probably second to none. Probably the best out of every single Nitty character that we have in game. But for the most part, I think you can get by with Pella, especially if you are running an ice character main team. You might not need Silver Wolf's overall kit, as you have quite good competition for Pella. Her E4 also reduces enemies' ice resistance. She can shred off enemy buffs, which is tons of strong alternative. But other than that, if you are running any other team outside of ice, and especially if you're a single target, I think she's offering a lot of value. This is of course for more like experienced players later in the game who have like many rosters to choose from. I'm just trying to share with you the opinions of a person who has more characters also, so you can make your decision from there. Where she would still fit in very nicely, especially if you're a later game player, is in a mono quantum team. If you have a character like Zila, you have Fucc here who's like super meta as well, and maybe you have a last harmony. Where's the quantum? Okay, I think we're just missing like a quantum harmony character. But if we have that, we're probably good to go. Let me just put in links here as a proxy for a quantum unit right now. And we have your mono quantum team. You drop in enemies' weakness in quantum, you get access to the Genius of Brilliant Star set, which also have additional defense break. She shreds enemy resistances, quantum weakness, tons of value. I think this is still a very, very solid team. Of course, it's a little bit expensive because you have to have triple quantum limited characters, which can be quite expensive. But hey, if you like it, you can always just save up and get them on their reruns as well, especially if you have Zila, definitely worth considering too. And that is for the alternatives currently in game. And to value add to this conversation, I want to talk about another alternative that might be coming out, which is important to think about, but I will talk about that in, of course, the later part where we talk about potential, because it's a future thing that might not happen. It depends on when the Huohuo is going to release. For now, in the current game state, alternatives doesn't exist, but good to know that we'll be covering that in a little bit. Now that we've touched on the current game state, let's talk about future value, because we want our characters that we spend money on to always scale better into the future. No point like pulling them for the presents and then they fall off like the next patch or something. We'll be feeling super frustrated with spending that kind of stellar jits when we can pick a better character. In my opinion, both of them are in a tricky situation for future value. And why do I say that? For Huohuo's case, if she was released in 1.0, she is super good, and the future value is like no one knows how many limited 5 stars they're going to release for sustain, so it would have looked bright. But for now, we already have like currently 2 very strong limited 5-star characters. She's the third one, so making 3 is like really overcrowding the S tier category of good sustain defensive units. Who knows whether they're planning to release more? And in my opinion, like the more characters that they release, the tighter this category becomes, and it becomes very, very tricky to recommend, because all of them can solo sustain. So you really don't need more than one, unless content becomes very, very difficult, or for example, they expand the Memory of Chaos to like 3-4 different teams. Then I could see a case for getting more. But in a sense, future value for her, I don't think is very, very high. Where she does outperform the other alternatives is definitely if we have a roster that requires damage to come from 3 sources or 2 or 3 sources, so straying away from the typical hyper carry style, focusing more on damage coming from everyone. She's going to outperform everyone very significantly because she attack buffs the entire team, energy buffs the entire team, whereas Luota, if you think about it, he's healing, focusing on one character, which if you're running a Blade, most likely is Blade. So very, very single target focus on like making sure one guy stays alive. Of course, he has a field that heals up everyone, but it's very, very minor amounts. For example, Fucc here, she's good in terms of AoE buffing crit rate for everyone, so also very strong, but doesn't have the amount of sustain of healing the entire team. So if they keep getting tick damage, likely will underperform Huohuo, who has very, very good healing. So the enemy just keeps dishing out a lot of damage. She's the best in slot healer for the 5 stars so far. Very, very good in that category. So that's when I will see like when she outperforms and when she will underperform in future, in my opinion. For Silverwolf, on the other hand, future value, this one's always a very tricky. I've said it from the start of 1.0. The more characters that you have, the worse she becomes. A lot of you at first, maybe you didn't really understand what that means, but I think as you grow, a lot of the earlier players, that more experienced players, can start to see why I say that now. When I say that in 1.0, when you have a character like Jingliu, when you have a character like Imbibitor Lune, you have Zealer, you have the choice of your DPS that you want to bring. In that case, you might not want to bring Silverwolf in. You don't really need her emergency dropping. You are mainly playing her for like defensive breaking, the rest shred, which Pella is currently an alternative. In future, we will have more defense breakers, and which will offer a lot more value. Maybe they are specialists to their set, maybe they have ability to push teammates or whatever not. Who knows, it's speculation. But in that sense, the more characters that you have, her emergency, I keep using the word emergency, but what I mean is the weakness breaking, the instant weakness breaking that you drop on the enemy based on your team combination. That is the part that makes her unique. And once that starts to fall off, she just becomes another debuffer. And I think the more DPSs you have in game, the less value she brings. Of course, not everyone has the money and resources to get so many DPSs, especially if you're a new player, but it's just something to consider. I personally don't use this character anymore. I much rather run a Harmony character, which is much more straightforward, where I can just push up my whole team regardless of what element I have to boost the damage. And I think it works a lot better than, for example, a Nihility character that focuses on one element. Unless you're running like mono elemental teams, I think that's when she really shines. But for now, even with the new relic set Panacony of the Panacony Dream set, I don't think it's justifiable that mono teams are super in the meta right now. But we have to see. Maybe the Memory of Chaos buffs may change. But that is like my thoughts on future value. And of course, let's talk about something more iffy, which will be the potential value. This is potential because it's very speculative and it's based on dreams and other stuff that I wouldn't classify it as high chance of coming out, but who knows, it might come out in future, and that is why I classify it as potential. So for this category, I think the biggest consideration and the worrying thing is for Silverwolf. My personal opinion is if there's like a colorless character that comes out. What I mean by colorless is if they attack enemy weaknesses which do not have a typing break. For example, if regardless of what is the enemy weakness, that character's ultimate deals damage to their break meter bar, and if a character like boosts weakness break efficiency regardless of what element, all that sense where elemental typing no longer becomes very important, her value diminishes very, very quickly, especially since her main key selling point is she drops in weaknesses onto enemy to help your team become more efficient. Much rather you'll just get that colorless break character that can break any element and fill up like one of the DPS slots, so at least you add more value in that sense. Which means that Pella is a very, very good alternative. You can just drop in weakness, and I keep comparing her to Pella, not because like they are equal, I'm not saying that they are equal, but she costs one full limited character pool. She doesn't. You can get her for free, and a lot of us got her for free in one of the patches, and you will likely get her more if you pull or you maybe have good RNG on the standard banner too. I think that's why I keep comparing them, because in terms of investment, how much money you're putting in terms of Stellar Jades and the returns that you get, I think Pella is pretty good for the returns that we get. So that is my biggest like worry for Silverwolf, and I think it's going to happen based on like some dreams and some thoughts that we have. And if that's the direction that we're going to, like colorless breaking or break effect becoming more relevant in the game, then her position is definitely threatened in a sense. If we have a 5-star character that ignores enemy weakness typing, then you might much rather like just play that character instead, rather than focusing on a defensive character, a supportive character like Silverwolf, who doesn't add like tons of damage compared to DPS characters. outside of whatever she does. Otherwise, this is like a huge stretch. Any more than this, I think is already just imagination at that point. So I think that's the main worry that I have about Silverwolf, my personal main worry. But if the game starts to become more focused towards break effect, I think that she still has value, especially if she can drop in weaknesses, your teammates break weakness much more quicker, you don't have too many resources, at least you can play into that weakness breaking gameplay as a newer player much quicker too. Huohuo, on the other hand, I don't really think she has much ways to be disturbed in terms of her position other than what we currently know. In my opinion, I think the part that makes her very special is the energy buff that she gives to the entire team. If you play with more characters that have very, very high energy costs and you give them a lot of energy, I think it's tons of value. Like if we see, for example, more characters like Argenti, which we have a double ultimate gauge, like one minor ultimate and one super high ultimate, her percentage energy restoration benefits these characters a ton, because it's the more energy they have, the more absolute that you get, which will eventually beat out the flat sustain that Huynh is providing, because she does give quite a lot of energy, but it's a flat amount. Hers is percentage, so I think it's very, very useful to consider too, and that is the potential where I can see her succeeding a little bit more in future as well. Now, that aside, we talked about a lot already. We talked about current value, future. I think one more last thing that I want to talk about is the free-to-play kit. And this category is really talking about, do you need to spend more than just the limited character E0 to get them up to function, or do you have to spend like get their signature light cone, get this, get that, and then the investment is going to be very different, right? We are talking very differently when we are comparing cars in the Toyota affordable range versus the Ferraris and the Lamborghini range, which is very, very different amounts of investment that we need, and it wouldn't be an apple to apple comparison. So free-to-play kit, both of them at E0, they are very, very functionable. I would say that between the two of them, the one that lacks a little bit in terms of free-to-play kit is probably Silverwolf. She does need a bit more energy restoration, and if you don't have an event like Cone back then, when she was first released with the event, which gives her a lot of energy restoration, probably you will find her rotations a bit slower to come about. You could make do with like Panacony, Sprightly Von Wet, which gives you the relic set 5% energy restoration, build a link rope, and try to find that energy restoration elsewhere, but it's probably still going to be a bit tougher to get perfect rotations that other people with the event like Cone might have. But still, I think it's not a really like make it or break it thing. It's just an iffy thing that is slightly slower restoration. You don't want her to have a good uptime in her out, because the more energy restoration she has, she can out different mobs. So you can like make it pseudo AoE in that sense, where everyone has defense break active. For Huohuo, on the other hand, I think that she works very, very fine. As mentioned in like her light cone video and the energy restoration comparison video that we did for her, most icons work well for her. You can pretty much slap on anything on her. You just need to learn the correct rotations, and she works very well. So in this category, I think I'll give it to Huohuo for being much better in terms of like total free to play, E0, don't even need signature light cone, whatever light cone you have, plug and play. Probably Huohuo will edge out a little bit. Silverwolf does see some value with a little bit of, especially her E1, which gives a lot of energy restoration refund. We already talked about that on the channel, whether that character's particular Eidolons are worth it or not. You can check it out if you're interested. But anyways, now let me just share my own personal bias. Between these two characters, as a person who have many characters, I'll be very honest and tell you that neither of them are good for my account if I didn't have them, if I was a content creator. I have every DPS in the game, with the except of Kara, I have every character, so I don't really need her weakness breaking too much. I already have very, very solid characters like Fucc and Luota, and even though I have her built very well also together the other, I much rather prefer Fucc's more reliable damage apportionment. She's more skill point positive as well, and these two are like very auto battle friendly characters. She is a little bit more, I would say, requires a bit of thinking to play, but definitely has a higher skill cap as well, if that's what you're looking for. Personally, I would skip both, and if you ask me to choose which is the better investment, I think Silverwolf is the better investment, because her options are Fucc and Luota, which I think Fucc is still the best character in the game, and I think Luota just offers a much more refreshing playstyle that is much more friendly for a lot more convenience for me as a person, content creator too. But that's my personal bias, a person that has every character in the game. I don't know about you. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And like and subscribe, we'll be doing one for Argenti next too. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.